With her thoughts on Ambassador Hillman's upcoming departure and the road ahead when it comes to Canada-U.S. trade, we're now reaching out to Louise Blais, Strategic Advisor with the Business Council of Canada. Between 2017 and 2021, Madame Blais was also Canada's ambassador to the United Nations. Madame Blais, thank you for joining us again.
Hello, great to see you, Michael.
And you. Listen, I want to first and foremost get your thoughts on Ambassador Hillman. We've heard a lot of praise for her working for Canada and Canadians. What would you say about what she has been able to accomplish during her time in D.C.?
Well, look, I think she did her best, and she's definitely had a lot of experience. And when she was number 2 at the embassy, she helped the renewal of NAFTA into USMCA, and she was at the center of that. And her skill set and her experience as trade negotiator were extremely useful at that time. And then she became ambassador. I think she cites for herself that one of the things she's most proud of is, of course, the release of the 2 Michaels. They worked really closely with the United States, but she was also there at a time where there was a lot of challenges, and not just on the Trump administration side, but there were some difficulties, obviously, coming from the Biden administration, such as IRA and Build Back Better Act, and many of those contain a lot of Buy America provisions. So it's been a sort of a bumpy ride, but I think she leaves with her head held high, and but now it's time for a change.
Mm-hmm. Time for a change. What do you make of the timing then? Because she is leaving just before the CUSMA review begins in earnest next year.
Well, I think that the deal with the Prime Minister was always that she was going to try to stay. She was going to stay a little longer than she had anticipated to help the Prime Minister through the negotiations that we have been in with until they were called off by the President. So I think now the time's right. There's been a pause, and now it looks as if the government wants to look forward to USMCA review. You heard the Prime Minister today he said that basically appointing somebody now would give that person time to kind of learn up and be ready for that review.
Mm-hmm. What skill sets do you think the next ambassador will need to have? And there is already a rumor of a name, but beyond names, what do you think the next ambassador needs to bring to the table in order to navigate this trade file with the U.S.?
Well, look, I think anyone that the Prime Minister would consider would have a really suitable background, would have a pedigree, would have had a proven track record in whatever field they were in. So if you start from that basis, what you need after that is a people person. You need somebody comfortable with engaging with people. You have to be able to read cues. You've got to love that part of the job, because that is an incredibly important part of the job. And we say that the Americans are transactional. They are, but they're also based on relationships. And to build those kinds of relationships, you need somebody that really enjoys people and that can really help understand where they're coming from, so that that person can give the best possible advice to the Prime Minister on where things are really at, not where we think what Ottawa thinks they're at. So, and that involves a lot of travel. You've got to get outside of the Beltway. You've got to understand regional dynamics. You've got to do so in a bipartisan fashion. You can't just go up on the Hill from time to time. You really, really have to cover the country and develop that rapport and that goodwill that will serve Canada well.
Okay, rapport, goodwill, the ability to travel and like the job in terms of interacting with people. So what would be your, I guess, priority list for whoever steps into this role next? What is the priority list of things they need to do in order to be ready for this CUSMA review?
Well, I think the number one thing is the relationship. I think they've got to put that back into a better stead. I think that the Prime Minister had combined the role of chief negotiator with that of ambassador. I would expect that with somebody new coming in, and he did so because he knew that Ambassador Hillman was at the end of her posting and could, take whatever happens at the negotiation table and then leave the post with that. But when you're ambassador, you have to rise above that. You got to manage the entire relationship, and trade is important. And don't get me wrong, USMCA renewal is critical, But at the same time, the relationship is security. We are steward of natural resources together, and you've got to be able to not bear the scars of whatever happened at the negotiation table. So I would expect him to separate those roles again, have somebody else do those negotiations, and have the ambassador go back to the role of ambassador. And I think I think will help Canada be in a better position, because the ambassador will be focused not on the technicalities, but in the relationship.
Hmm. You have many contacts south of the border, Madame Blais. I'm wondering what you're hearing in terms of enthusiasm to revisit this trade deal to ensure that it keeps going forward.
Well, what I'm hearing from Republicans and Democrats is that they think that this is a good trade deal. It was a bipartisan agreement when it came into force. I think that they want to see certain things looked at, not necessarily change, but maybe make sure that the implementation is exactly what they had in mind. I think that there'll be, unfortunately, it's happening in a mid-year cycle for the election. So we're gonna have to be careful to make sure that it doesn't become a sort of a political football in the United States, and just keep reminding them of how important the agreement is to them. You saw last week the hearings, the USTR hearings. There was a great deal of support coming from all directions in the United States. So, but at the same time, now we're seeing that the Congress wants to have some oversight, so that can be good and challenging. So I think it's going to be a bumpy road, but we have to stay steadfast as we move forward. And that means that more than ever, the ambassador is going to have to manage not just the administration, but Congress as well.
Well, without a doubt, 2026 is going to be a very important year. Louise Blais, as always, thank you for this. Appreciate the time.
Thank you for having me.